Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mindy Benderman, the Executive Director of GEEARS, the Georgia Early Education Alliance for Ready Students. I want to thank you for sharing some of your Giving Tuesday with us today as we talk about sharing your story for social impact. As many of you know, GEEARS is an advocacy, public policy, research, and public awareness building organization that works to support high quality early education and healthcare services for young children birth to 5 in Georgia and for their families. And today we thought of no better way to celebrate Giving Tuesday than to give back by giving you some inspiration and some skills so that you will all be equipped to be great advocates and tell your own stories as you go out today when this concludes for Giving Tuesday. So I want to thank you all for coming. I particularly want to thank our panelists. We have 3 expert panelists today. You will hear them introduced in just a few minutes, but they are Danica Campbell, Condace, Pressley, and then Randallette Williams. Danica and Condace will both give short presentations first, and then Stephanie Blank, the chairman of GEEARS, will then moderate a panel discussion with all 3 of our panelists, and we'll also take Q&A from the chat. So if you have questions, please add them to the chat and we'll have kind of a moderated conversation as well. And so with that, I don't want to waste a moment's time, but I want to introduce my partner and our board chair, Stephanie Blank, who will, as I said, moderate the conversation today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. And as Mindy said, we are so excited to be able to bring this information to you today. More than ever, we need to be able to effectively communicate to people about the work that we are all doing, why it matters, and why people should have a part in it. So being able to share our stories and to give those reasons in a way that really resonates with whatever audience that we're talking with and actually sticks with them is even more important than ever before. So we've got some wonderful folks here today to share their wealth of knowledge with you and hopefully ways that you can take back into your organization to grow and strengthen the work that you are doing as well. And we're going to start with Condace Pressley. Condace is an Emmy award-winning broadcast journalist. She has decades of experience. She is the host of the radio show and podcast called Perspectives, if you haven't yet checked that out. She is the former president of both the Atlanta and National Association of Black Journalists. Condace is also a University of Georgia alum. She's got to be super happy with how the football's going right now, as well as a member of the Georgia Radio and Georgia Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. She is incredibly active in the community, serves on the board of directors of the Girl Scouts of Greater Atlanta, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, the United Way of Greater Atlanta, Chris 180, and the Alliance for Christian Broadcasters. In what little free time she seems to have, I have heard she enjoys gardening and reading in her rocking chair. So please join me in welcoming Condace Pressley, who will kick off our event today with some words of wisdom. Thanks, Condace.
Stephanie, thank you so much for that wonderfully kind introduction, and good afternoon to everybody today. Thank you for being here. It's a great honor, really, for me to have an opportunity to share with this group on such an important day in our community. And it's an especially important day for me, not only because of the time that I personally give to a number of nonprofit organizations in our community, but also, as many of you do, being able to use the giant megaphone that we have at WSB Television to tell stories about the great work that you guys are doing in the community and to help affect change, positive change in the community by telling your stories and helping you all to raise the necessary dollars that you need in order to continue to do this work. It's not lost on any of us how difficult the last 19 to 20 months have been, not being able to get out early during the pandemic and then thinking, ooh, it's spring in 21. I think we're going to be able to get out and have some activities, only to be told, oh, nope, we're going to go back inside and stay again. And then just looking at the news that we are now going through with yet another Greek letter and the variant, just challenging for people doing amazing, amazing work. But what I wanted to do in the few minutes that I have with you guys this afternoon is presented from a visual and a television perspective, but know that these tips and tricks will work whether you are seeking to tell your story in print or in broadcast, whether that be on the radio, via a podcast, or on television, because each medium now presents 360 degrees and many different platforms. So even though I work at a television station, we have a website. So there is a visual opportunity there. I do some work for the radio station. We have a website. So there are visual opportunities there. And the same can be said for the video and the visuals that appear in our print publications, whether it be our local newspaper, Atlanta Magazine, or any of the other magazines that are available to all of us in the community. So now here comes the fun part where I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And I'm going to do that, and I'm going to click share, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to click again. And where did my little cursor go? There we go. Will somebody please nod if you can see my screen? Yay, that's wonderful. So again, what I wanted to do today is to show you that telling your story is indeed very simple. And as you'll see, VERY is an acronym for what I've tried to tee up for us here. The first thing you want to do is, whether you are talking about what your organization is doing, what cause it is that you're supporting, what message that you want, whether it's lawmakers or other community leaders or anyone to know, whenever you can share a story with visuals, that helps the person that you're talking to, again, visualize exactly what it is that you're talking about, and perhaps helps put them into that situation. So visuals are very important because they show what's happening. The next thing, when you're thinking about who's going to help you tell your story, if it's you as the executive director, or if it's Stephanie as your board chair, the people that you make available to the storytellers who are going to communicate your message out to the general public, they are helpful and essential in your storytelling because they lend credibility to the message that you're working to share. So that's an image of an expert there. And then the next thing I wanted to tell you about are the real people. And the real people, those are your clients, the people in the community that your organization is working to help. What those people do whenever you're telling your story, and it could even be, if not in the form of a media, but in a meeting. Let's say you're taking a meeting with someone who is a stakeholder or who can influence policy and change in the community, and you're going into that meeting with visuals. Showing up with real people really helps, not only with your expert, but also the real people who benefit from the work it is that you're doing. And because you bring the real person, they are able to share a firsthand experience as to how your work has been beneficial in their lives. And then lastly, the why, V-E-R-Y. Why is just this. Why are we telling your story now? Is there a reason why it is important? On today, Giving Tuesday, it's important for all of the many nonprofits across Metro Atlanta to tell stories about the work that they're doing in the community. Why? Because we're in that point of the calendar year where people are more thoughtful, they're more giving. It's the end of the year, and if people have not thought about supporting your organization, now is the time when they are open to thinking about supporting your organization. So always make sure, and if any of you have read the Simon Sinek books, you know why is so important. But why are we telling this story now? Perhaps if we are working on a cause for which there might be a need for legal or legislative action, there'd be an opportunity to tell a story across multiple platforms and then to share that story with the decision makers who are able to affect that change. So very briefly, it is very easy to tell your stories as long as there is a visual element, an expert authoritative element, real people who benefit from the work that you're doing, and that you're talking about what you're doing at the right time. making sure that the why is there. So now the next thing, I want to show you how all four of those elements came together with a story that we told recently on People to People.
These stories never get old. You're about to see a truly touching experience involving a Gwinnett County family caring for a little boy with an extremely rare disease. So now, thanks to the charity Sunshine on a Rainy Day and family-to-family partner American Signature Furniture, their lives are transformed.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Oh, I love it.
Humbled, grateful, and blessed. Just some of the symphony of feelings experienced on this special day inside the Willis home in Lawrenceville.
My heart is just so full. Like, I've never felt the way that I felt about anything, you know, till today.
Ooh, oh, I love it.
Mom Carmela Willis says she was blessed, and so were we, to witness this reveal of the latest home makeover by the charity Sunshine on a Rainy Day. It's all for this little guy, 6-year-old Amir, and a family who cares for him every day. Amir is battling an extremely rare and deadly epilepsy syndrome.
The survival of it is, you know, not very good.
The disease is so rare, just more than 200 people have it in the world. Patients often die at a very early age. Amir is often in the hospital, sometimes for weeks at a time.
It's hard. Amir just got out the hospital a few days ago, and it does put wear and tear on our family because Amir, he's a special boy. We just can't live our lives without him. And it's tough when he has to go to the hospital, and, you know, it's very rough.
But Amir is fighting, and with the family's faith and extended support system, they're not giving up. But with the limitations of their home, every day was a struggle, just doing basic things like getting around and bathing. That's why this bathroom and bedroom renovation means so much.
Most of the time I've been having to carry and maneuver around things. This would make it easier to put them in a chair and roll them into the shower simply. It would make it easier for us to change him, to do his trait change and everything of that sort.
With the discovery of each new feature of the renovation, elation.
The motion base for the bed. So we got you.
Also overwhelming, Amir's grandmother, Roberta, overcome with emotion.
And I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for what y'all did for my grandson. He is my life, and I fight because he's fighting. So I want to say thank you very much.
So how did all this happen? Well, the heart and soul and passion of the team from Sunshine on a Rainy Day, with nearly 10 years of making these dream makeovers become reality.
And just tell that this is our favorite day because the family actually gets to see it for the first time, and you can usually just see their emotion in their face of like how it's going to make their life so much easier and so much better. And we just love, even beyond that, months and years later, just getting updates from the family of how this really just made their life so much better.
Design team lead, Kim Regas.
It's so heartfelt and so deeply humbling to be able to participate in something that changes the life of someone who's so deserving.
And furnishings from family-to-family partner American Signature Furniture.
The owners of our company believe that in order to do well, you have to do good in the community. And what that means is that the money that our customers give us to fill their homes with furniture and things like that, it's our duty to return a portion of that to the communities that we serve.
Wow.
As for the favorite feature, the family says it is so hard to pick, but they say it's the superhero theme. Superheroes for their Super Amir.
It definitely makes it easier as far as care for Amir. It definitely makes me want to volunteer. Like I said, we've adopted basically members of Sunshine on a Rainy Day.
They shone, that sunlight was bright, and you just feel it in our hearts.
So sweet. He's so sweet.
One more kiss, one more kiss.
Definitely super Amir. Rainey and her husband, Peter, started the charity in 2012 as a hobby, and since that time, they've completed renovations on more than 140 homes. These stories.
And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. I hope you guys were able to see how visually we told that story, but see also how it has additional applications in other areas. And one of the things that I love about what we are able to do when we do tell a visual story like that for a nonprofit organization, once it airs on the television program, we then post it on the community page to our website, and we share the link with the nonprofit organization so that you all as nonprofit leaders can then share that story with your stakeholders, your board members, others in the community, hoping to get a more of a viral message out there for people who perhaps didn't see it the first time that it aired. And it again adds credibility and authenticity to much of the work that everybody does. So that is the little bit that I wanted to share with everybody this afternoon. And I thank you so much for your attention and your time.
Thank you so much, Condace. And as a designer, I have to say, I follow Sunshine on a Rainy Day on Instagram and love the work that they are doing. It's inspiring to see what can happen, especially for these kids who need it. So thank you for sharing their story, and thank you for sharing your information. And we will get to circle back to you to ask some specific questions once Danica is finished as well. But next, I want to introduce Danica Campbell, who is a fellow redhead and a friend of mine. Danica was most recently the CEO of Everywhere Agency. It was one of the country's top influencer marketing agencies, working with some of our most iconic brands. Everywhere Agency was acquired in 2020, which has allowed Danica to focus her time and attention on some of her passion projects. But before she was doing that, she had a really amazing career. She was a television producer, public relations executive, but she actually began her career at the Sesame Workshop, working to help educate our youngest learners, which I love because I love Sesame. And then she went on to entertain the adults, being a television producer, working on such shows as Saturday Night Live. She speaks a lot on influencer marketing. She's been a contributor to Forbes.com, but Danica also loves to travel. So she is a travel blogger, and you can find her at danica.me. She has been named the 2019 Marketer of the Year by the Atlanta American Marketing Association, and she was also a recipient of the Atlanta Business Chronicle's Women Who Mean Business Awards. But most importantly, for those of you who don't know, Danica is a pie maker extraordinaire. If you're ever lucky enough to get one of her pies, you're in for a real treat as well. And she's also been instrumental in raising just an incredible amount of awareness and funds for Covenant House, which helps with our homeless youth who are out on the streets. So with that, I will turn it over to my friend Danica.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Now I'm going to go ahead and toggle to share my screen. Lord knows what's going to show up here. Let me just go ahead and get to presenter view. Here we go. Everybody see something purple? Somebody with a megaphone? Thumbs up? Yay. Well, happy Giving Tuesday, everybody. And it's so great to be here with GEEARS. And as Stephanie said, I did start my career in early childhood education at Sesame Street. And I've had the honor of working with GEEARS off and on through the years. And I've seen firsthand the impact it has on parents able to find quality childcare for their children. But today it's really about you, and it's great to see all you influencers out there. And yeah, that's right, you. And I really should know, because I devoted the last dozen years of my life to building one of the leading influencer marketing agencies in the country. And the truth is, I worked with influencers with a gabillion followers. And I also worked with influencers that had just a few hundred. And if you want to know the truth, the number of followers mattered, but sometimes it was just that one lone person with a few hundred followers who had the most impact. And the truth is, sometimes the everyday sharer makes the biggest difference. Now, the challenge is when we think of that term influencer, because of the media, we immediately think of the Kardashians or some other reality TV star that's out there bearing their body and hawking their wares. But the truth is, when you think about your life and who influences you, my hunch and my hope is that it's not some reality TV star that's driving the decisions that you're making, but influence really happens with the real people we see and we hear from every day. You get your ideas and thoughts from topics from the people who you converse with. It might be a mom friend on social. It might be a colleague in fellowship. You may get an idea from workplace conversation. So influence really is happening person to person. And what's so interesting about the world we live in and have always lived in, historically this is true, is that sometimes conversations about the same topic happen again and again until they build momentum. And we're at a critical point right now in the field of childcare when it comes to that. So stick with me. And sometimes that momentum gathers and it always starts, let me just go back here. Just give me 1 sec here. Okay, good, we got it. And sometimes that momentum gathers and it always starts small. It typically starts with one person talking a lot about it, and they talk to a bunch of people, and those people talk to a bunch of people. And then after a while, a whole lot of people are talking about the same thing. And that's what I call influence amplified. Great example of influence amplified recently is Black Lives Matter movement, where there was there ever just one big influencer out there that said Black Lives Matter and everybody followed them? In fact, no. There were 3 women, one named Alicia Garza, one named Patrice Colors, and one named Opal Tometi. And I mention these names because they aren't exactly household names. I really didn't know their names until I began really studying the Black Lives Matter movement. And they began this back in 2013 in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman. So this conversation started in 2013 and it began happening and happening and happening again until it truly changed the discussion topic in America. And so the truth is, it takes time for a message to build and to resonate. And change really happens through that aggregating of stories around a singular theme. So here's another one. And I don't know about you, when you first heard about the Free Britney movement, I heard about it, oh my goodness, 2012? And it really didn't enter collective consciousness until 2019. And it used to be called Leave Britney Alone. And when I first heard about it, I said, oh, this is some other crazed fan idea. But it turned out there was some real concern about this woman's well-being and the issue of conservatorship. And the people who led it were just everyday people who happened to just love Britney. And they brought the conversation into the fold. And the truth is, I've mentioned 2 big movements that all have a big hashtag with it and yard signs to go with it, but you don't need a hashtag or a yard sign for it to be really real. Anybody notice that childcare is in the news a lot these days? Our president and politicians are talking about it. And sometimes it takes something really major, like really major, for people to talk about something a lot. And one of the types of major things might be take it away. Remember when they canceled childcare because of COVID? Suddenly everybody was talking about childcare again. When people start to talk about something a lot, change is bound to happen. And childcare is the news again, and your voice is critical. Now I can hear you out there saying, I'm not an influencer, I don't have a clever hashtag, which brings me to really my favorite story and a perfect story for Giving Tuesday, which is the Starfish Story. And I presume all of you know it, but if you don't mind, just bear with me. I'm kind of like an Irish girl at heart that loves storytelling. So let's just remember the Starfish Story. A little boy is walking down the beach and he sees all these starfish that is washed up and they don't have water and they're suffocating and they're going to die. So he's picking them up and throwing in the water, and a wise old man approaches and says, "Young man, what are you doing?" And the little boy says, "I'm rescuing the starfish. They're dying." And the old man says, "Why, son, look at this beach. There are tens of thousands of starfish out there. You can't possibly rescue all the starfish." To which the little boy answers, "I saved that one." So there's many ways to use your voice. And if you're on social, it might be sharing on social. It might be everyday conversation with a colleague or in fellowship. It might be writing a letter to your congressman, but your one voice around this issue does make a difference, particularly when a lot of people start talking about this. So, I should have warned you, I'm going to call on people. So if you're in the audience, time to get really nervous because I might just call on you. Are you quaking in your boots? Okay. Actually, I'm going to call on Mindy. So Mindy, if you can take yourself off mute. Mindy, I need your help with something. This is Tyler. He's a really nice guy. Honestly, he's a nice guy. He's a Harvard MBA. He works in finance. This fella is single. Woohoo. He's got a few nieces and nephews, but really right now, Tyler is focused on building his own portfolio and that of his clients. Very briefly, elevator speech. What's in it for Tyler? Why should Tyler care about early childhood education?
So I might say to Tyler, I might talk to Tyler about some of the data. I might talk to him about the data we found that shows that parents of young kids, when surveyed and asked whether they have had to quit a job, whether they've lost a job, or whether they've had to greatly change a job due to challenges with childcare, in July of this year, 1 in every 3 parents of young kids answer that question in the affirmative. And we know that causes over $1.75 billion of losses to Georgia's economy. So Tyler's a Harvard MBA. He cares about the economy and his own portfolio. And so I could talk to him first about the impact that lack of childcare might have on Georgia's economic engine. That might be one. But if I had time to have coffee with Tyler, maybe I would ask him about his own upbringing. Maybe he was raised by working parents, and maybe he was in childcare himself and remembers a teacher that he loved and some experiences that he had in childcare that maybe even led to him going to Harvard. So if I had time to really build a relationship with Tyler and learn his story, I might help him understand in those ways as well.
Oh, thanks, Mindy. I think Tyler might be convinced. And if I've got time to pull one other person from the audience, anybody mind if I do? Randallette, I'm picking on you, so take yourself off mute. She has no idea I'm doing this. So Randallette, let me tell you about Fred. Randallette's also a presenter, so perfect segue. Let me tell you about Fred. Fred's a really nice guy. He's a widow, loves to read, 1 grandkid, but she lives in Minnesota and is in high school. She goes to the library every day to get a new mystery book. What you going to tell Fred about why childcare is important, Randallette?
Oh, wow.
She had no idea I was doing this.
Well, Fred, I would say to him that, just because his kids are older and they're grown and they have kids of their own, that does not mean he is not still an important piece of this puzzle, this literacy puzzle that we are all so keen on playing, and that he plays a really important role in making sure that kids stay engaged. He can, serve in many different capacities. These folks in these age groups need to know that they're still needed. They're still very much, have very much to offer. And so he could possibly volunteer, to be a reader. Someone should tap him on the shoulder and invite him to come in and stay engaged in a school and be a grandparent reader. Of course, I work with Real Dads Read. He's a granddad. We look for granddads, uncles, brothers, cousins, all of them. So I would say to Fred, don't be, concerned about age. Don't be concerned about feeling as if you have nothing left to offer, nothing left to give, because you definitely do. And we're going to find a way to plug you in. So I'd grab him and just kind of plug him in myself.
Randallette, oh my goodness. I was actually worried about Fred because he's a widow, and I'm not worried about him anymore because I feel like he's got a mission in his life and it's going to relate to early childhood education. And with that, there you go. One starfish, one voice, one conversation at a time. It doesn't have to be a huge movement, but the topic of childcare is happening now. And all of you who are so invested in this, it's time to take part in that conversation. And with that, I'll stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Danica. We've got lots to talk about when we get ready. But before we start the panel, I did want to formally introduce, you just heard Randallette answer Danica's question, but I did want to introduce Randallette Williams. She is a serial volunteer extraordinaire and lover of all things related to literacy. She is the president of Chattahoochee Valley Parent to Parent LLC. And as she just mentioned, she currently oversees the Real Dads Read program and the Mayor's Summer Reading Club in her hometown of Columbus, Georgia. So for those of you who don't know about Real Dads Read program, it encourages reading among elementary and middle school age children to improve academic outcomes and strengthen the father-child bonds through reading. Randallette has somehow managed to install bookcases in barbershops throughout her city that run programs in local schools that focus on volunteers in the capacity of Real Dads Read. So we're so excited to have Randallette join us. And now we are going to move to the Q&A portion of the event. And I feel like the sun just shifted and I am probably blinding everybody. Just as a reminder, the chat is open. So if you have questions for Condace, Danica, or Randallette, please send them in to us through the chat function and I will be monitoring that as well. But I think I wanted to start with you, Condace, and we'll go to Danica. Obviously, we live in super divisive times right now. That is not a secret. And sometimes the messaging that we have, that we want to share, can somehow get pigeonholed into some of those dividing lines. So whether we're working on social justice issues, whether or not we're talking about the early learning community, and you've got folks who think that mom ought to be home with the babies, whatever the issue may be, sometimes they can get divided into different kind of ideologies. So how do we talk to folks on both sides of the aisle, or the blue or red divide, or however you want to talk about it? How do we talk to folks in a way that appeals to whatever audience that we need to be appealing to? Condace, do you want to kick that off?
Stephanie, absolutely. And you make a very good point. If there is one thing, again, as we go back to the thought of the fact that today is Giving Tuesday, that the last 19 months have taught us, it's been that despite the divisions that may exist in the community, audiences and people are still interested in one another and want to know what's going on in the community and who's doing what work. So that having been said, whenever we're out and we're talking about our work with a particular nonprofit, as long as we continue to focus on the work and the benefit, I mean, we've been talking about early childhood education and the need for daycare because there are so many moms who work, who have to work. As long as we can make those conversations relatable, you can do what Danica talked about and change hearts and minds one starfish at a time. Because, I mean, my mom worked, and from about the time that I was in the, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade, you know, I was a latchkey kid, and I'd get home from school, let myself into the house, make myself a snack, and sit down and watch Gilligan's Island or whatever else was on Turner TV, you know, on TBS at that time. And, you know, now I think, you know, as parents, we think about that and wondering, I don't know if I necessarily feel good about doing that with my kid, especially in these days and these times. But as long as that gives us a value proposition to talk to somebody about as to why it's important that there are these programs and organizations available to make things easier, because, you know, when we work together, you know, we build stronger communities. So that's really where I'd start on that question. I don't know if I exactly gave you the answer that you were looking for, Stephanie, but as you know, if we talk to each other on a one-on-one, person-to-person, your experience, what was your experience, what was my experience, kind of a way, I think we can get to, you know, the essence of the message that we're trying to share.
Danica, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the case of what we're talking about today with GEEARS, the good news is we're really talking about a positive topic, which are the health and the future of our children. So I really just always take a page from Randalette's scrapbook, which is find common ground. Did you notice how quickly she found common ground with Fred? Immediately. She's like, okay, we got this in common. You like to read, we need readers. I really just try to find common ground. And whether it's social media, whether it's in conversation, I think you don't want to enter that situation planning to convert people, but just to have the discussion and ask a lot of questions and get feedback. But let's just go back to the common ground, which is we really care about the future of society. We know that 0 to 5 is critical for youth. What happens to a child between 0 to 5 is going to impact their entire life. Those are some facts we can share. And don't we want the best for our children? And let's hope that in America, in the country in which we live in, with the exception of a few Grinches out there, most people do care about the health and the safety and the welfare of our children at the most vulnerable ages, 0 to 5.
Thank you, Danica. So Randallette, have you encountered folks, you know, in the work that you've been doing in Columbus who have been opposed or maybe just not supportive initially of this idea? And what was the messages you used to overcome that? Do we have Randallette?
She's on, Randallette, you're on mute.
Unmute there. Okay, there we go. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
You would think by now we would all be super experts at Zoom calls and whatnot. But to answer the question, yes, I have encountered a few Grinches, as Danica mentioned, along the way. But because I am somewhat of a bulldog, and yes, go dogs, love my dogs, I have a tendency to overlook that and go for, you know, the ones who are listening, the ones who buy into the vision, the ones who are on the same page as I am and they understand the importance of it. I don't get hung up on those that are not with me at that time. I understand sometimes people just kind of want to sit back and watch. They're looking for consistency. They're looking for constant messaging. They want to see the impact. They really want to wait and see. They have a wait and see sort of mentality. And so with that being said, I've recently, been contacted by a couple of those. I don't necessarily want to call them Grinches. I'll just call them the wait and seers, to now request a partnership. But I think because since around 2017, it's been a consistent outreach, a consistent effort to grow the programming, to partner with as many other entities in Columbus that I can, to get on the good side of those that have more influence than myself, such as our mayor with the Mayor's Summer Reading Club. When they see those types of individuals buying into what you're doing, then it begins to kind of change those hearts and those minds. And, they begin to think, well, maybe, maybe she's actually onto something. Maybe, this would be worth our time and our effort to partner with her. So to answer the question, yes, but I see 2022 as being one of those years where a lot of the folks that have the wait and seers are now ready to kind of come on board and join forces with me.
Thank you. So to the point that Randallette made about having some of the initial wait and seers jump on board, Danica, how important is it when you're first starting out to maybe get an unexpected early ally in the story that you're trying to tell, somebody that you've identified that maybe would have been one of those Grinches, and if you can get them on your side, does that really help in telling your story?
Yes. And Stephanie, if you don't mind, I might flip it back to you, because I've heard you talk about an experience that you had with an executive. And I believe what you said was he really wasn't interested in early childhood education, and you somehow, or he wasn't really interested in childcare or daycare. Are you remembering this story?
Was this about the CEO who told me it wasn't an issue for his company? It
wasn't an issue for his company. And then you asked about somebody who works for him. And can you tell that story? Because I think it's such a good story. Sorry to flip it on you, but I don't want to do disservice to that story.
Yeah, that was very good how you did that, Danica. So he's actually a friend, and we were talking about the need for childcare within his very large company, and he shared that he didn't think that this was much of an issue for his employees. And I really pushed back, and I said, I think that you're just not hearing that it's an issue. Number one, because lots of times women are not comfortable in sharing that they have an issue with this. And number two, because frankly, in the kind of the parental bubble in which he had, where he had a stay-at-home wife who was able to take care of that, he wasn't exposed to those challenges personally either. So I said to him, why don't you call so-and-so who works for you and ask her if this is an issue? So he said, okay, I'll text her right now. And he did. He texted her. And about 10 minutes later, he goes, you have opened up a big can of worms. And I said, why is that? He said, well, it turns out it's not a problem for my senior executive level people, but for everybody working for them, every EA, every, more of the hourly types, it is an issue. He said, I didn't know this. And so I think sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in the way our lives operate, and being able to step back from that and seeing how other folks actually operate in the world is really important. And to Randalette's point, I think that people, and yours as well, Danica, I do think that people care about kids and families. And so when they are exposed to new knowledge in a way that's very authentic and that's not preaching at them, I think they become more receptive to saying, this is an issue I need to focus on.
And in terms of exposure, there really, for those at the executive level, for those running companies, there really has been no better exposure than the pandemic. Because I don't know about you, but I've sat on so many meetings. I remember fairly early in the pandemic, sitting on a meeting with a client who had a 2.5-year-old, and she came on and she was so embarrassed. She said, "I'm so sorry. I just haven't been able to put my baby down for its nap." And the kid sat there through the meeting nodding, trying to fall asleep. I tried to set up another meeting with a CFO who is a woman. And I love the fact that the CEO of the company said, "Oh no, 3 o'clock doesn't work for her because her kids are out of school." And I thought, for the first time, maybe the CEO is now aware that 3 o'clock is a bewitching time, whether your children are in childcare or not, because a lot of times they're transitioning, right? So if they're in elementary school, they're transitioning to aftercare. So it's a time that in many parents' life, it's a pain that we're also aware of when we raise children. And that's why I do think there will be a lot of benefit coming out of this really difficult 18 months for parents in trying to juggle caring for their kids, but their boss is seeing it.
Yes, I agree completely. Condace, one of the things I wanted to ask you, because, that video was so moving, so beautifully done, so professionally done. But obviously that takes, a lot of resources. It takes money. You've got a lot of expertise behind you, when those are done. So for smaller organizations, how can they, is it okay to film something on an iPhone? And if it's not, 100% perfect, but it tells a great story, does it have to be all polished and sparkly the way, you guys can make it? Or does it still have impact, even if it's not as professional?
If there is anything that our passion for reality television has taught us, it's that the audience is hungry for less than polished material. So yes, you would be surprised at how much of the video that I'm able to use in many of the stories that we tell about nonprofit organization work is indeed video gathered by the nonprofit organization. The only coaching that I give everybody who volunteers, if you're shooting video of an event and you've got your iPhone, the one thing you want to do is you want to hold your phone horizontally. Mm-hmm. I know it's easy to take a picture like this, but just think about it. We've all got flat screen TVs at home and they're wider than they are tall. So as long as you turn your camera and hold it steady as best you can, there are things that we can work with. So it doesn't have to be super duper professional. A nonprofit may not have the resources to hire a videographer to come out and to cover and capture things. If they're just, the folks on the board and the people in the organization who are doing that work, it's absolutely okay.
That may be one of the best tips we get today, is to turn your phone horizontally. Who knew?
And of course, turn your phone horizontally so that it will, and then when you send it, it makes editing or using it just that much easier. And I did see the question about the acronym. I will put that in the chat here in just a sec.
Great. There was a question that came in for Randallette about your partners, Randallette, and how you've gotten those partners, and with the barbershops. So how have you done that?
I just ask. I'm one of those people who believe that you'll get one of 3 answers at any given time: yes, no, and maybe. And that is truly what I live by. I am not afraid to ask anyone for anything. I guess I have a tough skin, or you learn to develop one along the way and not to take it personally. But I just have gone through my Facebook contacts and identified various barbers in the community. I, of course, am a female, so I don't go to a barber. I do have a son now who his dad takes him to the barber, but he's only 8. So he's right within that time frame that I began working with Real Dads Read. And so some of those connections came from him going to the various barbershops, but for the most part, I will go through my contacts. I will put out an all call on Facebook and, hey, I've got some bookcases that I'd love to give away. Does anyone have any suggestions of who I might contact, or who thinks someone would like a bookcase in their barbershop? And I give a little blurb. I'm notorious for doing those very raw, uncut, unprofessional iPhone videos. going live on Facebook. My husband gets on to me all the time about looking more presentable. Most days I just kind of hop on when the spirit moves me and I don't get glammed up because that doesn't matter to me. It's not about me, it's about the mission. But I will, do all calls and I'll have pictures of the bookcases that I've taken. And I do try to make, the bookcases and everything look really appealing so that when I request for partnerships or request a referral, for someone to receive a bookcase, then they're able to see exactly what I'm offering. And then we go from there. But I am not afraid to ask anyone anything because I know if I don't get a yes the first time, there's always a possibility that I'll get a yes later. Hard no's, I've only had a few of those. I lean into the maybes and I run with the yeses. But just utilizing social media and really just promoting what we're offering and what we have to provide to the community and asking my network, to let me know who's available, who they think would be open to it.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know that we've all had some experience with the ice bucket challenge. Does it help, Danica, to have kind of a gimmicky thing to get people brought in to something when you're trying to create a movement? Does that help?
It's interesting. I get asked this question a lot. My agency we got the Guinness World Record for the most socially networked message in 2009. It was a great gimmick. We raised a lot of money for cancer, but it was a gimmick. What I worry about are nonprofits that try to do a gimmick like the Ice Bucket Challenge. And when you really look at the history of that, it was very organic. It kind of started here and went there. It was never started by the nonprofit. It was started by one guy, okay? And it took off. But for every Ice Bucket Challenge we hear about, there are thousands of others that people attempt to make happen. So again, I'm going to go with what Randallette and Condace have recommended: raw, unfiltered, real, simple ask. Stephanie, you mentioned Covenant House. You've helped us raise funds for Covenant House as well. Covenant House is the organization that helps get homeless teens off the street. Part of our fundraising this year, I thought, I'm going to go to Nextdoor. I'm always giving away things on Nextdoor. Randall, I have to connect with you because I've given away quite a few bookcases. But I thought I'll just go to Nextdoor and see if that community might respond, okay? Went to Nextdoor, told them I'm sleeping out for homeless youth. I got a $1,000 donation from a woman I didn't know. I was shocked. I didn't recognize her name. She saw it on Nextdoor and she felt like giving to this cause. Now, I didn't have a fancy graphic, didn't have a fancy hashtag. I worry when small nonprofits spend too much time kind of trying to curate and craft something very complicated. When you heard Randallette tell the story about the ask and the need, it was pretty simple. Condace's story, the ask and the need of Amir's family. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I want to get involved with that organization and give them beds and help them. Simple ask, simple need always trumps the day.
So it sounds like authenticity is really, really the key. And I think sometimes we can try and worry so much about telling the story that's going to appeal to this constituent group or that constituent group that we sometimes lose our authenticity. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there should just be simple, straight up, we really believe we're doing the right thing, and this is why, versus trying to, dance around and please somebody else. So I do think people respect authenticity.
And also, if you're a small nonprofit, you're really limited in your resources. So again, if we go back to Black Lives Matter, there wasn't a graphic designer at the beginning of Black Lives Matter that says it's going to be white font, black. It really happened more organically. Not everything is going to take off, but kind of the stick with it. I mean, I think this issue around childcare is in the news again. We're talking about it. Keep the conversation going. the ideas will aggregate.
So if we switch back to Condace for a second, how do you guys decide which story rises to the top? I mean, what do people need to do to get their story told? What makes it compelling for you guys?
Before I answer that question, Stephanie, I wanted to react to something that Danica just said about childcare and why it is in the news now and why it's going to continue to be in the news. And so this is really a key time for this movement to continue to grow organically. I'm sure everyone on the call has read articles about the Great Resignation and how many people as a result of the pandemic have reconsidered their lives, reconsidered their priorities, and whether or not they had whatever the next thing was going to be for them as a family lined up. Folks have just been quitting their jobs. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've learned how to work remotely and I'm successful at it, but my employer seems to insist that I need to be back in the building. And, I kind of enjoy having dinner with my family or going to my kids' soccer game. So with respect to the needs of how our workforce is going to reemerge out of this period that we've been in, again, puts this issue at the center of the conversation. Now, to your question about how do we choose stories? We're always looking for content. And I was talking to my mom driving in the office today, and I said, and it's always hard, especially on a day like today. How do you decide which stories you're going to tell, which ones are going to have the most impact? Because we can tell a story about a small nonprofit, and just by putting that story on television, it may make their entire year, which is a great thing. But for every one that we do, there's probably 3 or 4 that we sometimes don't have an opportunity to tell. So, in my world, the great thing that we have is a partnership with the Georgia Center for Nonprofits. And because they work with nonprofits large and small, and because together we collaborate on an event every year called the Nonprofit Media Summit, where leaders from nonprofit organizations, large and small, can come together. We've done it virtually for the last 2 years, and next year we'll do a hybrid virtual and in person here at the station. It's an opportunity for us to do a half-day tutorial on how to tell your story, how to communicate your message on whatever platform you want to share that story, and then to, again, get the conversation going and perhaps to initiate action. Just by interacting with a grand number of organizations that way, we have an opportunity to tell all sorts of stories. And then, I'm lucky. I've got a 30-minute community news program once a week where we tell 10 to 12 stories every Sunday about nonprofit organizations that are doing amazing work in the community. And since I've been in this role for the last 3 years, we've expanded the number of nonprofits that we work with. So I'm always soliciting ideas. And it's really rare when we say no. We really try and find a way to put something together to help you tell your story. And the only reason that we wouldn't, I would say, tell your story, and there are times when, for some of the newer organizations that I may work with, I'll look at a 990. I'll make sure that you're genuinely registered. We really want to, work more with .orgs as opposed to .coms and sort of things like that just are the business of being in the nonprofit space. But the only way I'm not going to tell your story is if one of my investigative reporters might end up telling your story in a different way. And, those are the ones we're going to stay away from.
Yeah, no, nobody wants that story.
Yeah, you don't want to see Richard Belcher knocking at your door. So
no. Well, this has been such great information. We have taped this today as well, so we can have that available to send out. I know many of you would like to learn more about Randalette's work. I know Condace posted in the chat stream some information. We will capture that and make sure that that gets included as well. So I want to thank Condace, Danica, and Randallette for all of your thoughts and ideas about helping us become better storytellers for the work that we do. And we look forward to working with you guys. My wheels are already turning for all 3 of you. So thank you for spending the time with us. And with that, I will turn it back over to Mindy.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Danica, Condace, and Randallette. I was taking notes of all the incredible nuggets and ideas that I got from your conversation, and I am just smiling from ear to ear. What we hope to accomplish today for Giving Tuesday was to have some fun, to give you all who are here some skills, to inspire you to be advocates, and to do something to give back that would support each of you and our partners. And as Stephanie said, we've also taped this. This conversation will be on our website available too, because there's just so much great information. But now on Giving Tuesday, we're going to ask you to give as well. You've heard, and one of the things I said at the very beginning, for those of you who might have joined early, is that I'm so inspired by all the stories of what great nonprofits in our communities are doing on Giving Tuesday. And part of our mission at GEEARS is to support those who are in the community working on early care and education and healthcare for our kids, our youngest kids birth to 5 and their families. And so I urge you to give to our partners. I also urge you to give back as advocates. Tell your stories. Take all these tips, share your stories with us, share them with your legislators. Speak up now about the need for high quality, affordable childcare. We have an opportunity in Congress. We hope that the Senate will act soon on the Build Back Better plan, and we need our Senate to pass the bill, and then we need Georgia to implement that. And so we need your help as advocates. And finally, we urge you all to make a tax deductible donation to GEEARS to support the work we do every day to advocate, to collect and share research and data, to raise public awareness, and to support our families and youngest children. And you can do that at the link at www.gears, spelled GEEARS.org/donate. So I want to thank you all. I hope you have a meaningful day today. I hope that you go and tell your story and share these messages with someone that you know in your life today and every day. So thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the day.